All right, welcome to another episode of the Political Playbook. I'm Wyatt. This is my co-host Darren, and today, obviously, there is a peace in the Middle East, and this is great. So, Darren, I don't know how much you've been keeping up with this war, but so we went to war for nuclear weapons. That we are now relying on the Iranians to basically pinky promise that they're not gonna ever get them again, and now our war aims are pretty much just to go back to the way things were before the war, as well as have a pinky promise with Iran with the fact that we're now going to give them $300 billion, right? And I think that the reason that this was such a disaster is because I think there was no plan really from the Trump Pentagon on how we were going to do this. I mean, like there was really just no clear plan, no vision for the region. I don't know. What do you take about how we got here and why this was such a disaster that led to this total surrender from the Trump White House?
How we got here, I guess you can really just chalk it up to really poor decision making, poor leadership, and poor understanding, uh, primarily by Trump, really more than anyone of really, the facts of the matter. Uh, it, I mean, it was basically well known that this closure of the strait was a huge risk before they even started the war, and if not guaranteed, and they did it anyways. And lo and behold, the worst the worst nightmare has come to pass, and now it's murky if it'll get opened anytime soon in the near future. Now, uh, I won't go too far into it yet, but it's tentatively open right now. We'll see if that holds.
Yeah, I mean, I am skeptical. I mean, I guess now, now that we've gone over like how we got here, basically the war was a total failure from a strategic standpoint, right? So let me just break that down really quick to the audience, right? So in Vietnam, we spilled more blood and treasure than we could possibly imagine. We dropped more ordnance. We killed more Vietnamese people than you could ever possibly count, right? And we ended up surrendering to them. So I know the audience is like, well, how is that possible? How could we surrender to some third world communist country? And well, the answer is because there was no real way you were going to win that war, strategically speaking, short of, a massive D-Day, post World War II, like Japan occupy the country. It just wasn't going to happen. And the same is true here. It doesn't matter how many bombs you were going to drop on Iran, as long as, because their win scenario was just to not lose and not surrender, right? And so we required total surrender from just dropping bombs. It was just never going to happen, right? And we tried our best, Darren. I mean, we we dropped so many bombs and we killed so many of their top people, and it still wasn't enough. So now we go back to the drawing board, and now we're about to be in like total global economic crisis from this oil energy contraction. And so now we have to capitulate, basically, surrender ourselves. So, do you know anything about this MOU?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of how much of a failure this all was, and how much of a decisive loss it was on our part, I mean, all you have to do is look at the Memorandum of Understanding and all the points of it, and it couldn't be any more clear that we lost this because it's all in Iran's favor. Nearly all is in Iran's favor. We have like maybe one or two things that you could probably spin as like a slight victory to us, but yeah, I mean, I'll just go in like broad strokes. So, basically, this MOU is formalizing the ceasefire that was in effect ever since I want to say early April, when Trump basically called off, uh, kinetic hostilities. And so there's a ceasefire, immediate and permanent termination of military operations across all fronts, including in Lebanon. And that's kind of one of the key sticking points because, as you know, Israel is not keen on doing so. But before we deep dive into that, I'll lay out the other broad themes of the MOU. The Strait of Hormuz, uh, it's going to be open again, and commercial vessels will be able to transit the strait free of charge for this 60-day negotiating period, which we are currently in. And we just checked before we started the podcast, and according to Google, the strait is right now open. However, it's hard to really say that is a fact. But for now, we're going to say it's open. And then, of course, we removed our blockade of the blockade, uh, and that is ongoing. We're moving vessels out as we speak. Uh, per, in terms of what Iran gets, they're going to get sanction relief. They're going to get many of their assets held in held up by other countries. Those things are going to be unfroze. There's also going to be a multi-billion. I think the number I saw was like 300 billion reconstruction reparation fund, uh, funded by the Gulf states, that Iran is going to have access to. And I don't know what all they can, I don't know what all the funds will be earmarked for, but, probably not military, but probably like a lot of civilian infrastructure. And then the nuclear program, I mean, this is also an Iran win because it looks like Iran will be allowed to keep their nuclear program. Maybe, and this is something that they're going to like really tack down over the 60 days. But what it looks like is that they might dilute their uranium, and then they might submit to IAEA surveillance. But ultimately, they're not getting rid of nuclear material in totality. They're keeping it. And those were like the main points. Is there anything you wanted to touch on, Wyatt, that I didn't bring up specifically?
That was basically it. I will say that it also does name or lay out a 60-day deadline to achieve a final deal, which is nice. And then also like the second point of the deal is about respecting the sovereignty of Iran and Lebanon, right? So like basically we agree not to interfere in each other's internal affairs. So, and I that's crazy because that's actually something that not even the Obama deal did, was acknowledge the sovereignty of the IRGC, which is just crazy. But I don't know. This deal, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into it, I mean, it had to come as a complete shock if you were somebody who was all for this war. And I'm thinking of like Will Chamberlain or like Jack Posobiec, people who like really got behind this as soon as they started like firing, right? And then all of a sudden we get to the negotiation table and you see this framework, right? Which is really what this is. And you're like, oh, so I was just fed a bunch of lies and horse shit, because let's be clear, this is a very favorable deal to the Iranians. Um, and it's only possible to have this framework if everything that we were told about this war was completely false, right? Like from the pro-war party. Because why? Like, doesn't Trump know that we're winning the war, and their missile program is all but diminished, and the Iranian Navy, Darren, it's at the bottom of the ocean. Doesn't he know that? Well, obviously he knows that, right? It's just none of their defense was based on any of that stuff. So, and even what
Oh,
we did diminish, it just never seemed like it was at the level that they said it was. Go ahead.
oh yeah. I mean, you're totally right. We were completely lied to because I recall thinking to myself in the early days of this war, I guess that would have been early March, late February. I believe it was February 28th when it kicked off. But regardless of the exact date, I remember thinking to myself, wow, I thought it would be a terrible idea to engage Iran like this, but lo and behold, it seems to be working. We've reduced their missile stockpile by yada yada. We've destroyed their so many launchers. We've destroyed, drone stockpiles and drone factories. And we killed their supreme leader and a bunch of the senior commanders. This, for how much I feared this day would come, I've got to say, it looks pretty good. And then the weeks went by, and eventually, it was abundantly clear after maybe 3 weeks or so, really probably like 2 weeks, that we were not making the progress they said we were, like in the first few days. And in fact, uh, we don't have the ability to make that kind of progress against such a big geographically, not to mention population wise, country such as Iran. It's just logistically almost impossible. I mean, they've basically made their entire country a fortress.
Right. I
And
mean, it's one of those things like in order to invade and occupy Iran, you're talking a D-Day level, and I'm not exaggerating. Whenever, people hear that, they go, "Oh yeah, right." No, I am as serious as a heart attack when I say it would require a D-Day level amphibious assault, and that might not even be enough. I mean, you're talking about it would have to require the single greatest amphibious assault in the history of warfare, right? That's and that might not even be enough. And that's just to get to it. That's not even to occupy. I mean, I don't. It took us what, a quarter of a million troops to occupy Iraq. How many is it going to take to occupy a country with 90 million people? It just was never possible. You know what I mean? It was never possible that we were going to go in there and occupy the country.
yeah, I mean, it was doomed from the start. And it might still be doomed because, you were talking about people who were upset by this deal. Well, as upset some MAGA influencers may be, I don't think any of them compare to how upset Netanyahu and any domestic Zionist or Israeli is. I mean, those guys are fuming right now because as we touched on, one of the points is that Israel has to wind down its war in Lebanon because Hezbollah, for our viewers that don't know, Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy, and Iran is looking out for their boys over there. So, but Israel has had no say in this deal. Israel, so from their point of view, they're like, well, if we're not at the negotiating table, then we don't want to agree to a ceasefire. So I guess from their point of view, it's understandable. Of course, from our point of view, uh, the Israelis are being far too audacious as always.
Yeah.
But let's talk about this a lot. Uh, let's talk about the Lebanon Israel aim because I really think that this is like the crux of it all. Because, if anything, our guys, so, Witkoff, Kushner, Vance, Trump, even, I mean, we're basically begging Iran for a deal at this point. We want the deal. We are fully committed to getting the deal. I think Iran wants the deal. They're going to extract a lot of concessions, but they want the deal too. But at any point, Israel could blow it all up, and they almost did over the last week or so because they've struck Lebanon time and time again. So let's talk about this more. Do you have some more to say
Yeah.
on it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the reason here's my understanding of the deal is that obviously the Iranians want peace, and to be honest with you, I'm not even sure that they want a bomb because I think if the Iranians have learned anything, it's that this closure of the strait or dominance of the strait, this is effectively and functionally their nuclear deterrent, right? Like, and the reason that we are willing to give all this up and remain the status quo is pissing off Israel. And it's for a couple of reasons. You named one of them, right? This MOU has no mention of Iran's ability to fund their proxies. It also has no mention of their ballistic missile program. It has no mention of it, right? It has no mention of demilitarization. And it doesn't even have a commitment to no nuclear enrichment, right? So if you're an Israeli, if you're Netanyahu, and you have pushed all your chips on Midnight Hammer and Epic Fury, and then eventually like making Iran a failed state like Libya, and you see that the administration wants to seek peace, you have obviously you're pissed. You know what I mean? Like, of course, why wouldn't you be pissed? So, but I want to narrow down on, I guess, your specific question about the conflict in Lebanon. So, obviously, Hezbollah is a, dear enemy of the Israelis. But to be honest with you, I think this might be potentially a poison pill from the Iranians. I think they're trying to cause friction between the United States and Israel, right? Or at least I see the potential for that because they know Netanyahu can't stop the war because if he stops the war, then the elections continue and he may go to jail. So Netanyahu,
Hmm.
Netanyahu has every single interest to keep the war going, and Netanyahu doesn't even really want peace with Iran. If we're being honest, I think he wants not just capitulation but regime change. So so I said a lot there, so I'm going to hand the floor back. But yeah, feel free to respond to anything.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right. Netanyahu has every incentive to keep this going because, well, as you said, if he doesn't, he's going to be out of office and then in jail. And then also, I mean, if he doesn't keep it going, then Iran just is in a much better position, and that is basically intolerable for Israel. So, if Iran is getting money because they're getting all this sanctions relief, they're getting unfrozen assets, that money's going to go, at least part of it, other than for the rebuild, is going to go towards defense. So that's more missiles and drones and R&D stuff that eventually will probably be used against Israel. And then, more funding for their proxies, Hezbollah, which is right on their border. And, you know, part of the reason part of the justification that now, obviously, it's it's something that the Israelis have been wanting to do. So uh, it's not really, it's not really a good justification. But one of the reasons they're doing this invasion in Lebanon is because uh, basically because of these Hezbollah rockets, all these Israelis in the north of the country can't go back to their houses because they're deathly afraid that it's going to get struck by a rocket. So they've made this buffer zone inside the country. And, if he can't solve that, think of how many voters, think of how many voters that is. I mean, that's a lot of people in the north of Israel. So I don't know. It's all linked, and, there, if it all hinges on the good behavior of Netanyahu, well, he has no incentive to act good. He has every incentive to defy us. I mean, and all we can do to rein him in, it seems, is these half-baked threats. Like, and it's not even a threat. Like JD Vance over the weekend, he people were praising him for a statement he made. He said something along the lines, Israel doesn't have a lot of friends in the world, and of all world leaders, Trump really is the only one to stand by their side. So it's amazing to me that they want to rub up against him and in a bad way and defy him. But I mean, if anything, that's just a statement of fact. He wasn't even threatening the Israelis like, "Oh, we're gonna cut aid or move on without you if you don't comply." He was just kind of stating uh, the situation as it stands currently. So I don't know. I think if we're, if this whole ceasefire hinges on, or well, reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, if that all hinges on this ceasefire, which is like the first of the 14 points, well, I don't, and one, and Lebanon and Israel are party to that ceasefire. Well, I don't think it's going to continue. Uh, there's 60 days here for Netanyahu to mess things up. I think he definitely will.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my opinion too. I mean, if you're somebody, let's say you disagree with this MOU, basically like this deal to surrender to Iran, I would just breathe a sigh of relief because there's a good chance that Netanyahu is going to bail you out because he will not stand for this deal, right? And basically, here is what peace is relying on. It's basically, you said it's based on the behavior of Netanyahu. I would pin it more on, how aligned are Trump and Netanyahu? Like, is Trump able to restrain the behavior of the Israeli government? Like, I would like to imagine, and listen, my understanding is that they're like actually like business partners, friends, whatever you want to call it. They have a good working relationship with each other. This idea that they hate each other is just not true, right?
Yeah,
But
I
oh, go
tend
ahead.
to agree. I tend to agree. I think I think a lot of this is theatrics, but
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because like, do you remember? And I swear I'm going somewhere with this. When Mom Donnie was in the White House, and some reporter asked, like, "Do you stand by calling him Hitler?" And he was about to give this long-winded, brilliant answer, and then Trump was like, "You can just say yes. It's okay. I get it. It's politics." And I think that's kind of what hopefully Trump is having that conversation with Netanyahu. He's like, look, I understand Ben Gvir and Smotrich have to say what they have to say, and you can say whatever you have to say, but you're going to abide by this deal. You know what I mean? Like it, and I don't think it should have to be where he threatens to cut off aid or anything like that. Now, listen, I want him to cut off aid, and I'm sure you do too. But it's one of those things that like you don't even have to go there. I don't think. I mean, Obama didn't, right? Like, you don't think Obama, after the JCPOA, was dealing with pressure from the Iranians or from the Israelis? He was just able to rein them in. He was going to be like, if you do anything, you do anything alone. And Israel can't do anything alone. The only reason they have the ability to project power at all, I mean, let's be real here. I mean, it's a country of like 9 million people, right? And a third of those are Palestinians. So you got 6 million Israeli Jews versus a country of 90 million people, right? So, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of math to figure out who would outlast who and who has the better power to project here, right? Um, I mean, I don't know. I don't know, Darren. It's I hope for the love of God that this sticks. But I don't know. I am skeptical, just like you. What do you think of the deal, though? Not to switch back. Do you support, defend, hate the MOU?
Uh, I have mixed feelings because on one hand,
Sure.
I'm incredibly happy that it seems to be coming to a close. Like if it all works out, in 60 days and the ceasefire is, totally, we kept the ceasefire for 60 days and we have a peace, hopefully one that lasts, then yeah, I'd be really pleased with it. But on the other hand, it is a total loss. It's a total capitulation, and it's humiliating because it was something that was totally avoidable. It was completely just a series of bad choices. So now our country looks bad on the world stage. Uh, we're going to be able to project less power, especially in the Middle East region, because of this. And now our adversaries are in a far better position than they once were. So, on one hand, I didn't want it to continue, so I'm happy because of that. On the other hand, it's almost sickening to see us lose in such a uh, I don't even know the word for it. It's embarrassing. It really is embarrassing because we're the superpower here. At any point, and I get it. I mean, on some level, we do have to act with restraint because at any point we could wipe Iran off the map. So I mean, it's not like a testament to our actual power because if we did want to, we could win, obviously. But it just goes to show that we don't have the willpower right now. Like there's like this malaise, running through our country. Obviously we would never go to a ground war with Iran because nobody wants that. So I mean, the lack of will even is just I don't know. I don't want to say disgusting. On some level, I'm glad the Americans don't have the will to fight a silly war like this, but it's just sad. How about you? I mean, would you have rather? How do you feel about the MOU broadly?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I generally speaking, the optics are horrible. And it is a slightly worse deal than the Obama JCPOA, right? Like I understand that. But if you're asking me if this was preferable to total war or the status quo where Iranians are throwing rockets and blowing up ships in the Strait of Hormuz, yes, I think it's worth it. It's one of the tough things about governing where you have to do things that aren't popular and frankly humiliating. Like this, make no mistake, this is humiliating, right? Our president made it a total blunder on what was essentially a gamble that after Midnight Hammer, or sorry, Epic Fury, that the Iranian people would rise up and overthrow their government. And once it didn't pay off, it became clearly unwinnable. And the only thing that would, maintain peace and secure a long-lasting version of that is going to require concessions, right? That's what makes this deal worse from the JCPOA, right? Because in the JCPOA, Iran didn't have this new deterrent that they knew that they could do. They didn't realize how easy it was. They weren't going to get $300 billion. Dollars. They weren't going to get oil sanctions completely lifted, right? Like, having said all of that, I will debate any person in the world on the merits that this is preferable to a full on ground war or the status quo, is my opinion. Because, like I said, it was an unwinnable situation the second the people didn't rise up and overthrow their government. and it was way too risky to risk that, and that's why this was a fucking bad idea. But there has to be a way to criticize how we got here without, embracing Trump's ability to seek peace, because it's almost like putting out a fire you started. So I don't know. I don't know if any of that made sense, but I don't know.
No, it made sense. Yeah, I mean,
Like, I'm not
yeah,
giving
but
Trump credit for this deal, right?
oh
Because
no, yeah.
I mean, how the fuck could I? Now, I also don't want to be too critical because I know the consequences of that could be he just starts blowing shit up again, and then we're back right where we started. So, um, we're in a weird spot. Is the, you know,
To say the least, yeah. I mean, the status quo was just completely intolerable, and we can go into that. I mean, it looks like it's probably already set to happen, regardless.
right?
But I mean, there's probably going to be a pretty big energy disruption. I mean, more. There already has been, but what I mean is, we've been offsetting kind of how bad's like the effect has been on the market with our strategic reserves. So the oil prices haven't been as bad as they could be. I think we are going, even if, let's say this, throughout this 60 days, there's a ceasefire and transit returns back to normal. The damage has been done. There's going to be a shock. It's going to take a long time, relatively long time, not like an ultra, not like years, but it'll take a few months before everything is, back to business as usual. So you know,
Yeah,
we are due for some high oil prices coming up, and if Netanyahu scuttles this deal, we're really screwed because that means those oil prices will be there to stay, and that could be many, many months of us paying over 150 a barrel. Maybe we get to 200 at some point. I don't know. Then you're talking like even in Oklahoma or Arkansas or something, you're talking like $6 gas.
yeah. And to the audience who doesn't know what he's talking about, the United States, as well as other countries, has this reserve of oil called, we call it the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And it's at the lowest point it's been since like 1983. It's like over 40 years, basically. And that's basically what's saving us from paying $6 at the pump, right? And it's not just us. Like Europe is doing this, Asia especially is doing this. And listen, that's what that's what they're for, right? That's what petroleum reserves are for. Times like this, you empty them out. The problem is Trump will not refill them because it's going to cost $500 billion, right? It's going to be in the neighborhood of 450 billion, right? He's not he's not doing that. And like you said, that's not going to save you in the long term. That's basically just going to be to minimize. Like the supply shock is already there, right? We're just trying to figure out when it's going to bang, you know, which is going to cause economic contractions. But I think another aspect of this that is not getting well looked at is how many military assets we've used during this war that has left us, more exposed to things than we would like to be. For example, interceptors. We use something like 60% of our interceptors and it's going to take a decade for us to get back to pre-war levels if we don't use another one, right? So, and then that doesn't even count missiles, right? That doesn't count, sonar, UAVs, doesn't count any of that stuff. So, I don't know. I mean, if you're like, why did we capitulate? We could withstand the heat. No, the fuck we couldn't, right? Because if we would have let those reserves run out, then we're fucked. If we run out of interceptors, well, then we're fucked, right? Or at least we could be. So, I understand at some level they kind of had us by the balls, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we had to. initiate this ceasefire that, just recently got formalized with this MOU. Because if we didn't, then, 2, 3 more weeks down the line, we wouldn't be able to intercept any of the missiles hitting our Gulf allies or Israel. And then we'd be really screwed. Then we'd have to completely capitulate to whatever they want. Or we'd have to go up the escalation ladder if they kept bombing, and we'd just have to nuke them. I mean, that would be the logic, because you wouldn't be able to stop them with, conventional bombs. You would have to go as extreme as possible and hope that they stop. So I mean, we were in an incredibly precarious situation. We still are. Yeah, I mean, things are not looking good, and I mean, I have my fingers crossed that this will all work out. But if past precedent is anything to go by, I mean, I don't think this ceasefire lasts all 60 days. But uh, well, here let's bet.
Yeah,
When do you
that's
think? When do you? At what point in the 60 days do you think it all falls apart, or do you think we make it? I bet by day 30, there's going to be a big disruption, and it'll probably have fallen apart by day 30.
so let me think. That'll put us to about mid-August is when this 60 days is supposed to be done. I would say if we make it to, I mean, I bet, Israel, I bet we could make it probably to like day 50. And that is a very optimistic approach. But I think the reason for that, like at least from my perspective, is Iran is basically the one that's going to get to decide whether or not Israel and the United States are obeying their half of the deal, right? So at the end of the day, I think they want the oil sanction relief, and I think that they want a couple other things from that deal. So I could see them being a little lenient on Lebanon. I think what they really want is a drastic reduction in the conflict. Like JD Vance even pointed this out the other day. Ceasefire doesn't mean ceasefire. It just means a dramatic reduction of conflict. And I think the Iranians mostly agree with that. They may say something like on TV to get the attention of the West and make sure that they are not fucking around, right? But like overall, they understand that like there are going to be bombs that fall on Hezbollah. It's just we want to lower the amount, minimize as much as we can, and then put ourselves in a better strategic position, right? So I don't know. Let me ask you this: do you trust the Iranians to honor their? Let's just say for purely hypothetical reasons, the Israelis commit to abiding by the deal. Do you agree with the Iranians, or do you have faith in the Iranians to honor their behalf?
Um, well, it's hard to say, because in the past they've actually acted in pretty good faith. However, you could argue that that came from a place of weakness, like they had to act in good faith because otherwise they would have been punished severely for not doing so. Uh, Now I think the calculus has changed. I mean, at any point they could disrupt the entire Earth's oil supply. I mean, like you said, it's in many ways it's better than a nuke, because it doesn't come with the taboo, yet it is a huge deterrent, and you don't really even have to kill anybody with it. So I just feel as though their calculus has changed, and from what things I've been seeing, uh, I don't know. I mean, I think largely they still have been acting in relatively good faith since the end of February. So I'm gonna say that they will probably uphold their deal. The one thing that concerns me though is the new guy in charge, Khamenei's son. His first name is escaping me right. Mushtaba Hamane. I actually don't even know if this guy is alive or if maybe the IRGC is just claiming he's alive. And I know that there is some like internal strife between the IRGC and then like the elected leadership. So we have the Galibaf and Pezeshkian, of course, the president, and some other figures. And I don't think them and the IRGC necessarily see eye to eye, because I think the elected leadership are more so moderates, whereas, of course, the IRGC is far more hardline. So at any point, I do think I think these moderates we're negotiating with, I think they probably really want the ceasefire, but ultimately, they don't have the guns and they don't have the ultimate authority. So at any point, it could probably be scuttled by Mushtaba or just the IRGC generally.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of share your concern that, like, okay, after this, because they were basically, you know, Fox News paper tiger for a long time. Like, everyone was like, oh my gosh, Iran, like, they're a part of the axis of evil and they have so much capabilities, and that's why we need to oppose them, and da 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 da. You and I both know that, like, for the most part, that was greatly exaggerated. And then all of a sudden, they decide, holy shit, it's possible. We actually can exert our will on this strait, this very important strait. Um, and now I would be shocked if they weren't more willing to use that in the future because they know it's the one card they have, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, really, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like there's much else that they can really do. They're not going to attack the mainland United States, right? But I don't know. I feel like if you're looking at like what is best for Iran in 10 years, then obviously like opening up to the world markets is clearly the answer, right? Um, but I don't know how much they want that. I mean, to some level, they still are a military theocratic dictatorship, right? So how much do they care about the well-being of their people? I don't know. Um, but I don't know. I would still err on the side of like, even if they're not completely trustworthy, worst case, we can put the sanctions back on. So that's my 2 cents. But if you feel like you've said your piece there, I would love to go into like political impact of the administration.
Okay, yeah. Let's definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
So,
So let's think about this, right? So who did Trump, whenever he was trying to sell the war, if you remember, he sent out Rubio and Hegseth, right? And then now that he's trying to sell the end of the conflict, he's sending out JD Vance, right? And I think it's fair to say that all three of those guys got, in their own way, brutally ripped apart by the media, by the commentators, and by the Republican base. Um, Vance for selling a surrender, Rubio for justifying a war on behalf of the Israelis, right? I mean, literally said that. And then Hegseth for God knows what, just being a jackass. So I guess my question to you is, how do you think this impacts 2028 for, the next Republican nominee? We'll come back to the midterms, but I just wanted to get your take on this first.
um, well, I actually have mixed feelings because on one hand, uh, the Iran war is probably a net negative overall for any of these guys' future prospects. But you mentioned, Marco Rubio and Hegseth. They were out at the start, out in front of the cameras. JD Vance was really not as visible. Now, especially this weekend, now that it's being wrapped up, we don't really see much Marco Rubio or Hegseth, but we see a lot of JD Vance. And that is uh, it's curious because Rubio's our Secretary of State, so you would actually imagine Rubio would be performing the functions that JD Vance is. But regardless of how bad this Iran war is for all of them generally, I think for the factions which either side plays to, this is kind of like a good thing in a way. And let me explain it. So, I mean, take Hegseth out of the equation because that guy has no political future, but
Right.
take Rubio. Rubio, he is more so on the faction of, I guess what you would call the neocons or, the more hawkish Republicans or even the Israel firsters, uh, so to speak. He is without a doubt more so on that side of things. And I think his role in all this has scored him huge brownie points with that particular faction of the Republican Party, which does not have the hearts and minds of the youth, but they do have a lot of old voters and they do have a lot of money. So there's that. And I think for JD Vance, he's kind of this like new Republican, like maybe you're a podcast bro, or maybe you're ever so slightly Israel critical. He's like the Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens type of. There's more energy with his faction, and not everyone in this faction of the Republican Party is thrilled with him, but he's kind of like representative of this new wave. So I think the fact that he's the one wrapping it up, and come 2028, when there's the Republican primary, he can say, well, I brought the Iran war to a close, and I am for putting restrictions on Israel. And look, I think a lot of that is all a total facade, because ultimately I think JD Vance is very pro-Israel. And you can just like look at the money around him and what the people who fund him support, and then you can extrapolate that to his own politics. But ultimately, I think this is actually in some ways a win for Rubio and a win for Vance, for their own prospective sides within the Republican Party, if that makes sense. But what say you? I mean, even if it is a minor win for Vance and Rubio to, I don't know, show out for their sides of the base, is this gonna like just, is the whole thing just such a net negative that it kills them anyways? Or
Yeah, yeah, that's basically my calculation. Anyone listen, this administration is political plutonium. Okay. So in 2028, you want to hear my way too early prediction, right? Neither of these two will be the Republican nominee for president unless they just do like they did for Bernie and Hillary Clinton, where they just rig it to where those are, it's basically just Rubio or just Vance. If it's a truly like open jungle primary, these two will get exposed so fucking quick, and it will be a Republican challenger to this war that ends up emerging. That would be my guess. But I mean, let's not. I mean, maybe we can switch to this a little bit. You cannot state how impactful this is to Trump's legacy, right? Like you think of it like you can't mention George Bush without talking about the war in Iraq and how much of a disaster it was, and torture and killing civilians, and you know all of that. We're going to spread democracy, right? This is the same thing, but even worse. This is a combination of that and Vietnam, where we openly surrendered in record time, right? I mean, I can't imagine that this is going to be looked on good. I mean, you remember Afghanistan, the pullout, which I supported, right? Um, the amount of shit that that got versus the amount of shit that Trump is getting for this is way worse. Just objectively, right? Like pure
Oh yeah.
X's and
Oh yeah.
O's, right? Like it's not even fucking close. And um, it's only going to get worse if the peace lasts, unfortunately, which is why I think the chance of it lasting is a long shot. From his own side, by the way, because liberals are not going to like him either way, but from his own side. So I think anyone attached to this is going to share some of that burden, right? So I don't know.
Well,
Um,
I hope you're right because I want neither of those guys to be the nominee in 2028. But uh, I've yet to see another likely candidate rise up. I think those guys will definitely be running.
yeah.
Is how I see it.
Oh, of course. And that's going to be very. But yeah, that's my way too early 2028 prediction for the Republican Party is that neither of these two are going to be up there eventually. So, which I know you're just fucking unbelievably stoked about, right?
Oh
So,
yeah.
um, yeah, switching gears, I guess backwards, right? Unless there's more you'd like to say about 2028.
No, no. I think that about covers it for now.
Okay. Now let's think short term, like immediate future, right? Midterms coming up. How do you think this impacts his chances in the midterms? Because obviously the House was probably going to be a long shot for Republicans anyway, but now it appears, especially with the you know uh, Texas being in play for the Senate, that the Democrats have a chance to take back the Senate. It would still be a long shot, but what do you think this does to the Republicans' midterm chances?
It definitely cements that they're going to lose the House. The Senate will still be hard. In the past, I have predicted that uh, the Republicans would lose both. Uh, I don't know. It's still hard to say because I mean,
It's a tough
it's
map,
just
by the way.
yeah,
It's a tough map this election cycle for the Democrats to win. You're basically saying they would have to win. It's something like North Carolina, Texas, maybe a Florida, and keep Georgia, right? Which I don't feel like any of those are locks, right? You know what I mean? Oh, and Maine. I forgot about Maine, but Maine they should win. Plattner seems like he's on the right track, but it's a long shot, right?
yeah. There's just so much structurally against the Democrats when it comes to the Senate that I don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean, like you said, Maine, I think Plattner is going to win that handily. You mentioned Texas. That Tallarico fellow does seem to have some energy. He kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies, so I I really hope he doesn't win.
Oh, but not
Even
over
though,
Paxton, though, right? I mean, you can't defend Ken Paxton, right? There's no way.
honestly, like
Oh, you just it's
I
just because you don't know about him. That's what it's got to be.
I've really not read up into. I have heard he's like a scumbag, but I mean, I don't really care.
He's like
I know
he's like Darth Sidious, dude. I mean, he's just a fucking total piece of shit.
that may be true, but I don't know. There's just something so psychopathic looking about Tallarico, something like in the face that it's like I don't know. I mean, it's actually like low key scary, but
It's kind of
uh,
what you would expect. I know what face you're talking about. It's like what you would expect from like a homeschool, like evangelical kid in the South to just
yes,
constantly have that stare. And you and I know that stare because we've seen it. You know what I mean? So I know it's
yes,
almost uncanny, right? Like it's I know what you mean. I think I can just get over it, but I know what you're talking about.
yeah. It really is the eyes for me. Like, there's something about his eyes. And I don't know. I don't have like the vocabulary to really describe why it creeps me out, but or maybe it's like his entire face. I don't know. It's very hard to articulate, but he has one of these faces that just screams like psychopath. I, d-
Yeah, yeah. I
I
don't
don't know.
know. I think it's more in play than you might give it credit for, but um, even though you might not be rooting for it, but also the economy. This is what I was going to get to next. Is the economy's not doing Trump any favors either. Like this is not, and it's not like people are going to vote based on the performance of deportations now. So I don't know. I think we're looking at not good if you're a Republican. Not good.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing good this administration has accomplished because, they're really not deporting anyone now. That's been really rolled back. Uh, yeah, and then inflation like last month was like 4%. So
Dude, they're gonna hike rates again.
yeah, I saw that. Like it's not coming down. They're probably gonna. I saw something they might hike it like three
That's
times.
what Bank of America said. That's who said. I was about to pull that up next. Which is crazy because this new guy, you got to think, basically the only job requirement he had was that he was going to lower rates, and even he, total charlatan that he is like, yeah, listen, I can't lower the rates. Like, you know what I mean? Inflation is just way too out of control. Which honestly, like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I kind of agree with. I think we've been playing with too much free money for a long time. I think rates probably need to sit at where they're at or higher for at least a decade. Like it's just we're in a weird era of 0% interest rates, and it just probably needs to just never happen again. But that's an unpopular opinion.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I like selfishly I want rates to go down because I would love to refinance my house. I'm uh the generations before us got incredibly lucky with those rates. I mean, they pay absolutely nothing each month and they own a home. So I'm very jealous and envious about that, I will say, and it's a huge handicap on our generation. On the other hand, though, I mean, you just can't reduce rates right now. Unfortunately, I mean, uh, it like you were saying, if the crony that Trump installed is unwilling to do it and will in fact raise rates, I mean, what would Powell have done if he were still here? It might have been raised even more than three times. I mean,
Yeah. Nope. Total agreement there. Well, cool. Anything else you'd want to mention before we hop off here?
I just hope, I kind of do hope that Democrats take it all this midterms. They just need to totally encumber and slow down this administration. Just totally handicap him, keep him from dealing any more damage. Hopefully, uh, what's the amendment where the vice president can take the reins from a crazy president? That's
25th.
I think that sounds right. That's what JD Vance needs to do because I've heard things from people in the know, and they say that, well, and by people in the know, I mean commentators that are in the know. I'm obviously not connected like that, but they say that when people talk to Trump in person, it's like he's a crazy person. Like he's just like this insane old man. And that's scary because at least even though Biden was totally out to lunch, he was pretty benign as far as, I mean, I guess if you're a Gazan, you probably don't feel like that, but relative to where we are now, I feel like Biden was pretty benign, even though he was out to lunch. Trump, he's having these like old man crazy fits. So I mean, he nearly ruined the talks yesterday. Sunday.
Yeah, he did threaten to kill him. He did do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding. He literally literally said, "You won't make it on the fucking plane ride back" or something like that. He was like, "I'll bomb your plane" or some shit. Like it's unbelievable.
Oh yeah. I mean, and of course, they went back. Thank goodness they went back to the negotiating table. But he could have ruined the entire thing just because he's totally belligerent and crazy. So yeah,
Yeah.
I just hope the Democrats are able to rein this dude in because it's scary.
Yeah, and I'm a little worried about that. Maybe we could do another full episode on that in like November once they win. But man, I just have such low expectations for Democrats. They're such ineffective pussies. Like it's just, you know, what do you think they're gonna do? Do you think that they're gonna fucking go full regalian and start withdrawing funds for the military if he pursues this war? Or do you think they're just gonna do like bullshit articles of impeachment? You know, like it's I I would be shocked if they now they are going to get subpoena power. They are going to get oversight, so that's good, right? Because at least like you and I will know, like the educated, like the people who like stay in tune with politics, we will know all the corrupt shit that we basically already know. But we'll just know it further in detail. But the idea to me that if you're counting on the Democrats to fully reel in this administration, we are in rough fucking shape, my friend. That's just my 2 cents.